the Judicial Services Commission at this hour holding its interviews to fill the vacancy for the Water Tribunal chairperson. 2 candidates are being interviewed as the process to fill vacancies in the courts wraps up. Now, currently being interviewed is Ms LH Malema, and Newzroom Afrika's Mohlaoli is there for us and joins us live now. Tumaole, I'll resist the temptation to ask whether there are any relations to the EFF leader, but more importantly, talk to us about this candidate and who are they and what questions have they had to field?
Well, indeed, Colleen, I'm very glad that you resisted that temptation to ask about that relation or lack thereof. And I can tell you that, of course, Commissioner Malema, who is one of the commissioners here at the JSC's interviews, is not present. So certainly that would not be one of those questions that one would be able to field to him directly, even if one were able to. But in terms of what these candidates are here all about, when one looks at the first candidate who was interviewed this morning, which would be Advocate Make, the questions would be about the understanding of the Water Tribunal and its role, and in terms of its role in transformation of the water resources of the country. Very interesting question that, Koli, about transformation of the water resources in the country. And this is something that Advocate Make dealt with at some length this morning, talking about the fact that the majority of the population under, of course, the previous dispensation, apartheid, didn't have that much water allocated to them, and that the vast majority of water was allocated to the minority of the population, which at the time would have been, of course, the Caucasian or white population of the country. This is post or before 1994. Post 1994, the tribunal's role was to ensure that there is equitable access to water. Now, this question is also quite complex because when Advocate Make unfolded it, the question of who owns the water resources of the country came into play. Now, water is supposed to be a resource that everyone has access to. This is enshrined in our constitution. However, Advocate Make was talking about the tribunal's role in transformation when it comes to what is called as water traders. He posed the questions: how can water traders sell what they don't own? Against that backdrop, he was arguing that the Constitution enshrines equitable access to water and other resources to all South Africans. However, the Water Board and the Water Tribunal is meant to oversee this issue of water traders. And water traders are effectively given access to sell water through licensing process. And he says that when you are given a water license, you are granted 1 million cubic liters of water which you can sell onto the market, and that many of these water traders only then sell 400,000 cubic liters. Now the question is, what happens to the other 600,000 cubic liters? And he was arguing that the Water Tribunal's role is to ensure that it polices that surplus water, to ensure that the water traders do what they are expected to ensure that everyone has equitable access to water by giving that water access to previously disadvantaged communities and some of the poorer communities. His argument is that that excess water is a key resource that is meant not for commercial use, but to ensure it balances the scales. Because, again, when you look at the disparities in terms of economic access, the majority of South Africans, which would be the black populace, still don't have access to clean quality water. Now, as it stands right now, the candidate that's under review is Ms LH Malema, and she has been giving quite a detailed account of her understanding of the tribunal's role, and it has been something of, I must say, a lecture of sorts, because this candidate has been fielding questions, but her answers have been certainly displaying a keen understanding of the tribunal's role in matters of adjudication, again, when it comes to the issue of equitable access and what equitable access actually means in a country where water is, of course, a scarce resource. One just has to consider that despite the heavy downpours that we have seen in recent weeks leading up to this point, despite the heat that we are feeling now, we have come from a period where water was quite scarce, a drought period, and the Water Tribunal would then be sure to oversee the various water boards in Gauteng, in the Western Cape, in KwaZulu-Natal and other provinces that in terms of their management of water resources, and if there are disputes, that it is the platform to ensure that those disputes are fielded and not running out across the courts in the country, whereby then they would take up time that was meant for other matters. So the tribunal's role is quite important, and in terms of the understanding of the candidates, they certainly seem to have a grasp on that.
Madam Saudi, thank you very much for putting us in picture there at the last leg of the Judicial Service Commission interviews.